outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, CEO of the Crone Law Firm, and with me today is my very good friend, Ken Moody, who is Special Assistant to Mayor Jim Strickland, and really he's in the mayor's second term and has been there from day one and is really, really important to how the mayor's office interacts with the community at large. Ken, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Alan, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And anytime I can be in your company, I'm always going to jump at the opportunity. I miss you around here at City Hall.
I miss being there. I really do. It particularly these days. It's when I was there, there's nothing going on. But in the last few months, y'all have had pandemics and civil unrest and budgets and everything else.
I was telling you and I were talking just prior to this, that this is a total of 18 years for me that I've been in city government, and never has there been so many major important things happen at one time. Normally there's one issue you can deal with and move to the next when it arises, but never has been so many important things. I mean, this COVID-19, it's a health concern that we all have to be mindful of. The protest and those injustice things, those are conversations that we all need to have. We need to have those in a respectful and constructive manner. And so those are all issues, again, that we are dealing with here, but the important issues. And I would tell you that it's gratifying to me to be on a team with the mayor and to be able to handle these issues. I would tell you that they're tough issues, but I don't think we could have a better leader in helping us navigate and dealing with these issues than the mayor.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about that. Of course, you and I are both a little biased in his favor, having worked with him as long as we have. But yeah, I think I'm so glad that he's our mayor. Let me depart a little bit from my normal formula. Regular watchers of this podcast or listeners of this podcast know that I generally like to talk about people's background, but since we're talking about current events, one thing, I know that you have been in the middle of Mayor Strickland's efforts to address racial and other social injustice, particularly as it relates to the police force and their interaction with the public. Goes all the way back to early in the first term in 2016, the Black Lives Matter protest that culminated with the bridge incident. Can you talk a little bit about the Strickland administration's efforts to address these concerns that predate the most recent protests?
It's interesting, and as a African-American mayor who these issues are so directly impacted and affect, it gives me a chance to look at it from both perspectives. Again, because I can understand our community that has that concern, because if you just look at history in itself, historically, we've always had challenges as African-Americans, especially African-American men, in dealing with that. But then when I'm able to take my personal experiences and put on my professional hat, and I can kind of see both sides of it. But I would tell you that from the bridge protest, we learned a lot. But the one thing, Alan, that I respect so much and appreciate so much of Mayor Strickland is that when these type racial issues happen, he understands that being a white male, he doesn't always get that perspective, and he listens. He and I have so many really good conversations, just he and I man to man, about racial tension and racial injustices, and he understands that he hadn't lived it, and so he doesn't try to solve it. What he does is he listens. He allows me to go into the community, talk with individuals, listen to them, bring that perspective back, give him my perspective, and then from a mayoral's perspective and a leadership perspective, he takes all that information and he makes a good decision. But I'll tell you, he listens, and that's so important to me. It's kind of like I remember when I lost my mother, and people say, "I know how you feel." No, you may know how you feel when you lost your mother, but you don't know how I feel when I lost mine. And so I look at it that way with him. He knows there's an issue. He knows there's challenges. He knows he's responsible for ultimately bringing resolutions to solve them, but he listens and he understands that it's a perspective that he can only get from those who have lived it. And then I appreciate that so much of him, that he listens. And the reason I know he listens is that not all the time, but most time he'll take what I say to heart and he makes a decision in line with that. And so it's been great working with him. And then we've got a diverse team here at City Hall. As you know, you were once part of that as well too. And so that diversity brings a lot of ideas and suggestions to the table too. Of course, we've got African-American females a part of this administration that are mothers of African-American men that have dealt with that. And then we've got Caucasians, male and females, who perhaps have not lived it, but have friends. Like you and I, we're friends. And so you have an idea of what those challenges are. And so we have a really good, diverse team that we all respect each other's opinion. We all expect each other's upbringing and experiences. And we all just kind of work together for that common goal.
I hear what you're saying, and you know, the thing that has struck me in recent weeks, particularly, is in talking with my friends who are African American. Every single, particularly men, every single African American man that I have talked to has got a story, or more than one story, about interactions with the police that I, as a white guy, can't identify with. And, you know, to me, that is where you got to start with this, is where an African-American guy is driving down Poplar Avenue 11 at night and doesn't expect to get pulled over. And once we get there, then we really will be making some progress, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, it's interesting, as an African-American man like myself, grew up in the inner city. I'm the youngest of 11 kids, grew up in a single parent home with my mother who raised us. And we had struggle and challenges, but I don't remember the level of challenge we were facing today that we had back then. I mean, my mom was worried about how she'd feed us, how she'd clothe us. And the police had always been, we weren't afraid of them, but we felt a sense of protection. And as things went on and on, there was just this mistrust. And it's not just here in Memphis. I mean, this problem isn't unique to Memphis. This is a national problem. But, you know, Alan, the one thing that, and I think I've heard many people say, that is so encouraging, it's disappointing what happened with George Floyd. I think that was a travesty, and it should never happen again. It should have never happened. But to see the diversity of the communities that are coming together to talk about this, and I was talking to an elder mentor of mine, and I referenced to him, I said, what happened with George Floyd in comparison to the Civil Rights Museum? It wasn't until Blacks had always been mistreated back in the early 50s and 60s, but it wasn't until the world saw, or the nation saw, the spraying of the water hose on Blacks, the putting of dogs on Black, that they said, enough of this. Let's come together, because we're all human, to change this. And that was the Civil Rights Movement. I believe now, when this country and this world saw that officer put his knee on George Floyd's neck and saw how that guy was killed, and realized the discussions talked about, it's more, a lot of George Floyds. We've not heard about many of the George Floyd. And you look at how you see it, Black, white, young, old, male, female, Republican, Democrats, all people. And I believe these are people of faith have come together and say, enough of this is enough. Let's do it. Let's address this, and let's call it out for what it is. And my only concern at this point is that I hope we don't let this moment pass. We've got a real opportunity to make a difference. There are people who have been uncomfortable talking about this, are more comfortable now talking about this. There are people who have just sit idly by with influence, that did not address it, that are willing to address it now. And so we just got to now take advantage of this opportunity to really, really make a difference. And so I'm comfortable that we're going to make a difference this time, because there's just so many people of different backgrounds and nationalities that are concerned about this, and that does not want to see this happen again.
Right. And I think that one of the most important things, what you just said, is people are more comfortable talking about it.
Yes.
And, you know, there were lots of things that had gone unsaid between people. And I've had more conversations like this in private with people in the last 3 or 4 weeks than I've had in my whole life. And I think it's important to say, as well as I know many members of the Memphis Police Department, that this, you said this isn't special to Memphis. It's also not special to police. I mean, this is a societal issue where we've got to realize, as you say, we got more in common than we have differences. And we've really got to examine ourselves and say, okay, where am I not living up to the standard of equality, and how am I treating people, or how am I approaching relationships different because of skin color or some sort of cultural difference, and breaking down those barriers interpersonally, because it's not fair to just say this is a police problem. I mean, right. The police side has its own characteristics to it, but I think it's unfair to think, well, we solved the police racial relationship and we're done. I think we're only just beginning at that point.
Right, and I think it's also important to know that 99% of our policemen are good people. They work hard. I mean, can you imagine, Alan, having a job where every day you get up and your job is to deal with confrontation all day, every day, and you just don't know. I mean, none of us know if we'll ever make it back home the same day. But when you've got a job that you know there's a higher chance, based on your profession, that you may or may not make it back home every day, that's a lot of pressure and stress. So our police do a good job. It's just those one or two few ones that, and unfortunately too, those one or two bad ones are the ones that get more media attention than the 99% of the good ones. And that's where we have to also make a change as well too, is that let's talk about the goodness of, I remember Officer Friendly when I was growing up, would come to our elementary school and talk to us all the time. I remember the police officers that patrolled my community coming up knew us, that would see me up at the store. I may be doing something, he'll say, hey, I'm gonna go tell Miss Moody on you. You know, I remember those. And so, and I believe, I may be naive, but I still believe we can get back to that. And I know there's some conversation about community policing, and I know there's a real challenge for us manpower-wise with policing, but I really believe that we can get back to where the community embraces the police embraces the community, and we can all work this out. That's just a conversation, again, that we all got to have. And it's interesting, it's, you know, I talked to some of my friends and colleagues, and they asked me, how is it during this time with me being a Black man working for a white mayor? And I say, you know, our conversations are comfortable. Mayor and I have these conversations all the time. We're comfortable talking Black, white, economic issues and all that. And so these are no different times between he and I at all, because we have that kind of relationship where we always have talked race. And he, without being a Black man, as close as he gets it. Again, he understands there's injustices, and he understands there needs to be change. He's made changes. I mean, he has, since this conversation started, he has made changes. And so it's so good for me right now to be in this capacity, because he and I have such a great, honest, open relationship that we can talk these things, and we both get it. And I don't expect him all the time to understand, because he's not a Black man. And I understand I'm not a white man, and so I have to understand that. But to be able to have a relationship with a guy like that, and your boss, and can talk about these issues, it's a tough time now, but it makes it so much easier, because you can imagine in my community, in the African-American community, being it with activists, being with pastors, we're having those conversations. And I'm having to have conversations with them that Black men have together and to try to get them to understand another perspective. And so this is, I would tell you, my wife and I talk, Alan, this is the most challenging time of my professional career. I said to people that I've had to use every skill set I had, and I've had to develop some skill sets as I'm going along too, because you have to walk that fine line where I want my community to know that I'm here to represent them, and I'm going to make sure their issues are heard without them not feeling like, do I really get it? Because if you look at me from where I am now, Ken Moody played basketball for the Tigers, worked 13 years for Willie Harrington. He's working right beside Jim Strickland. It looks like I've had a privileged life. And that's not always been the case. Again, having grew up in the inner city in a single parent family, youngest of 11 kids, it has been a struggle and a challenge. And I've had to say to some pastors and activists, I've had to share with them my background so they can understand who I am, where I came from, and that I get it. And I understand there's a conversation, but there's a way we've got to address this conversation. So it's been rewarding, it's been challenging, but my faith, as you know, I'm a Christian, my faith is in God, and He has led me through this, and I know He'll continue to lead me through it.
Well, that's great, and I agree with everything you said. Let me ask you this: you mentioned being a Tiger, and you've got you do enjoy the privilege of having put the uniform on and made a significant contribution to that team during your playing days. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and maybe the good segue into it is there's a belief, at least among white folks, that sports was really one of the first places where, going back to the time when you were playing, where there was some integration and maybe people learned to get along with one another despite racial differences because the team concept was so important. When you were playing in college and high school, did you find that to be the case, or was there still barriers that you had to overcome?
Oh, absolutely. I think we can take it farther back to when Coach Finch and Ronnie Robinson decided to play. This was right after the Dr. King's assassination here in the city. Racial tension was at its all-time high, and they set the standard. Ronnie and Coach Finch did. I would tell you that you can imagine the influence they were getting from African Americans saying, don't go to Memphis State. It's a racist institution. They only want you there for your skill set. But they had to have had strong parents to encourage them to do that, because what they did, they started that relationship that allowed communities to look at us differently. And when Ronnie and Coach Finch went there, that started the healing process of our city since the Dr. King thing. And it's interesting, Alan, because I remember my days as a Tiger. I played for Coach Finch and Coach Kirk. And I'll never forget, and I'm writing a book, so I'm not going to tell everything about this because I want this part as my book. But I'll just never forget when the university made that decision to move on from Coach Kirk to Coach Finch. It was my senior year in college, and I'll never forget we were playing basketball in the field house preseason, and the AD called us all downstairs. We didn't know what was going on and told us what was going to happen. And at that time, there were 11 players on my team as teammates, and the only white was John Wilfong. The rest of us were African Americans. And I'll never forget us leaving the field house, walking to the dorm, and we said, man, they're not going to give Coach Finch that job. No way they're going to give a black guy that job. We were 19, 20-year-old young men trying to grasp all of this in, but just based on the history and the little things that we knew. We were immature. And I remember us walking to the dorm and saying, man, who's going to be our coach? Because there's no way they're going to give Coach Finch that job. And we only said that because he was black. We only said that because historically, there had never been a black coach before. And historically, that just wasn't, not just in Memphis, throughout college sports during that time, there just wasn't many black coaches. And as much as Coach meant to us, we just did not think they'd give him that job. And when they gave it to him, I would tell you, for us, it was, for me as a young Black man, to see him get that opportunity. And a lot of people forget, and I have to remember this, Coach was just in his 30s, when he got that job. And when he got it, he was a bit overwhelmed. But as a young Black kid growing up saying, man, Coach went to Melrose, he's from Orange Mound, he's been an assistant coach, now he's a head coach, man, the sky's the limit. I just gotta, and Coach was, he was tough on us. I mean, and so it's interesting, in his whole dealing with us was a fatherly figure. Many of us were kids who didn't have a father in our lives. And so he became our coach and our father, and we watched him grow into that role. I did. I mean, so my senior year was his first year as head coach, and I remember just the city coming together. I mean, we would go places, and it wasn't you were Black, you were white, you were rich, you were poor. Tiger basketball, and I say it to this day, it means everything to this city. When that program is doing well, it seems to be this city is doing well. And so I would always believe in my heart that Tiger basketball brings all generations together, Black, white, young, old, rich, poor. When you're rooting for Tiger basketball, there is no differences. You're a Tiger fan, and I would tell you this, Alan, no one, I don't think, I mean, sure, many of us, but I have benefited from being a Tiger more than anything. This city has done well by Ken Moody. I would tell you that from Tiger basketball to my career now, this city has embraced me, but that all started again with Tiger basketball. And so I'm a product of the city. I would tell any kid that if you're from Memphis and you get a chance to stay home and play, I played over 30 years ago, and the mayor gets a kick out of it because whenever he and I go anywhere, it's always, you're the Moody guy, you play basketball for the Tigers. It's a lifelong fraternity, but it's a lifelong appreciation that this city has for us, and I'm so appreciative of it.
That's right. That's right. Now, tell me a little bit about what was it like to play for Coach Kirk?
It was interesting that Coach wasn't as tough on us as Larry was, Coach Finch was. He was let's go win and let's win and have fun. There wasn't a whole lot of discipline. But I would tell you this, there was nobody we thought were more prepared to get us through a last 2 minutes of a basketball game than Daniel Kirk. I mean, he had us convinced. But what we realized as I realized as time went on was any head coach has got to surround himself with good assistants. And it's interesting, Coach Finch's role was he knew us. We were all African Americans. He's from this city. He knew our parents. Coach Finch recruited our parents, not us. and so Coach would make sure that he went out and got guys that could play from this community and knew us. And then Coach Lee Fowler, who I've always had a lot of admiration and respect for, I won't say he was the brains of it, but it was a whole lot of his game planning. And so you brought Coach Kirk was a master of having Coach Fowler, who's the game planner, having Coach Finch, who recruited us, knew us, was a father figure to us, kept us disciplined and kept us together. And you bring all of that together, it was good. But I will say that as it relates to the discipline of it, Coach didn't have do a lot of discipline with us, but he really didn't need to because Coach Finch did that for him. Coach Finch knew all of our families. He knew our background. And so when he saw one of us acting out of character or doing something out of character, he brought us back in. And so he was Coach Kirk. It was a big difference. Coach Kirk was the day before the game, an hour practice, go eat and have a good time. Coach Finch, day before the game, 3-hour practice. It was Coach Finch's mindset was, I'm gonna wear you young guys out where you ain't gonna go chasing the girls, you're not gonna hang out, you're gonna go to the room and get tired. But what he didn't realize, we were some knuckleheads. We thought we could just practice hard and hang out, but they were different. They were so different. For Coach Finch to have spent so much time working under Coach Kirk, his philosophy and his approach was so much different, but it's because he knew us more personally. He knew our families more personally, and he approached it. I would tell you, my senior year with Coach Finch as first-year head coach, I was miserable. But I was miserable because he wanted me to grow up and be a man. But I was also miserable from a personal standpoint, and you'll get a kick out of this, Alan. My senior year, if you remember Sylvester Gray.
Oh, yeah.
Sylvester was a freshman my senior year, came from Bolton, All-American high school. But at the beginning of my senior year, he was ineligible. He could not play. Sylvester probably missed the first 4 or 5 games, and we played some tough games, and I started. And I'll never forget, we went preseason NIT, we played Cleveland State here in the Coliseum and beat them. We played Michigan here at the Coliseum and beat them. And we went to New York in the Final Four of the NIT, and Sylvester became eligible as we went to New York, and Coach took me out of the lineup. That's when I lost my starting position to it, and it just, as a young kid, I was just destroyed. I was like, man, why? And so, but as the year went on, I accepted my role, and I realized that, man, a 6-man role is pretty good. This may be a blessing in disguise. I get a chance to really sit back, kind of see how the game is flowing, and then go in and make adjustments. But Coach was always there for us. Coach Dorsey Sin was the assistant coach. Mm-hmm. And then Coach Dave Luce, who, again, I just became so close to and so fond of. We had a real caring coaching staff. And as I look back on it, that was a big part of me maturing into a young man.
Well, from you and I were in school about the same time. What was your last year? What year did you graduate?
87. Coach Finch's, 87 was my last year.
All right, that was my senior year too. So you and I were there at the same time. And I remember with Kirk particularly, it's interesting you talk about the last 2 minutes. If the team was within 6 or 7 points in the last 2 minutes, you almost, from the stands, you almost relaxed and said, oh, well, this is, Kirk's got him right where they want him. It seemed to me, and I'd be interested in your perspective, he seemed to me to be one of the best coaches at calling a timeout, bringing the team over. And I don't know if he drew something up or what he said in that moment, but you went back and either you or Andre Turner or somebody made a play and turned the game around right after that timeout. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. I mean, he would always say, right after he called it timeout, we get in the huddle, is that if you listen to me, we'll win. If you do what I say, we're going to win. But the other thing, Coach, was he was a tactician at working the officials throughout the game, because he knew, too, that if he worked them throughout the game, didn't get on them too much, but when it came to those last 2 minutes and he drew up a play or he was going to need a call from the officials, he knew that he had worked them enough during that game, and that he would not only would we, if we did what he said we'd win, we put the officials in a position where he'd get that call also. And that was just, I mean, that's brilliance. If you think about it, that's really brilliance in being able to coach a game from beginning to end.
What do you have a specific memory of an instance like that stands out in your mind, a game that you won through that kind of situation?
I mean, there were a bunch of them. I just remember me personally, that was a Kansas game here in the Mid-South Coliseum. They were ranked, I think, 4th, and we were ranked 10th. And we played at the Coliseum midday, national TV, Billy Packer and Brent Musburger. And the first half, they just controlled us. I mean, they were, I remember it was Calvin Thompson. He could not miss. I mean, he was just going, and I didn't play the whole first half. And Calvin Thompson just couldn't miss. And Coach Kirk comes to me the 2 or 3 minutes into the second half, and he says, can you guard that guy? Of course, I'm not going to. Of course I can guard him, Coach. But he says, Ken, I'm telling you, if you go in, you play defense, you guard that guy, you're going to make a big shot. You're going to make a big shot in this game, put us in a position to win, and we're going to win this game down the stretch. We end up going to overtime, but I'll never forget This is the biggest shot I ever made in my career. Was against Kansas. And I teased Andre because I said, man, this is probably the only time you ever passed me the ball. But we were down like 12, and we made this big run, and I hit a shot deep in the corner to put us up. And when I came to the sideline, he looked at me, he says, didn't I tell you? And then we go back in there, and I mean, I want to think maybe Andre or someone, we beat them on a last second shot or a shot somewhere in there, and it was like prophetic. He called it out. And so those are moments, I mean, me personally, that's the one game I remember more than anything, is that not playing the whole first half, being a little out of it, and then him coming to me in the second half and then saying, you're going to make big shots for us, just play defense, it's going to come, and we're going to win this at the end. And so I'll never forget, we were, again, I think we moved up. They went down to 10, we moved up to 4, and it was good. That year out, if you remember, we started out the season 20-0. The 85-86 season, we started out 20-0, and I'll never forget, we go down to Virginia Tech, and Mr. Dale Curry, and he had done the prior year. But what I really remember about that was, I think North Carolina was number 1 and we were number 2. And they had gotten beat the night before. We were to go down to Blacksburg to play Virginia Tech. And Dick Vitale goes, I don't care what happens. If Memphis beats Virginia Tech, Memphis State's not the number 1 team in the nation. They are not. And I'll just never forget that. And we go down there and they actually beat us. And our season spiraled from that. We finished up, we started out 20-0. We ended up finished up being 28-6. We lost 6 of our last 14 games, but our season started spiraling after that. And there were some other factors to that. You know, we had guys getting ready to graduate and hopefully go pro and some other things. But it was, that year for me was special, as well as my senior year was special as well too.
Yeah, I remember that game in Blacksburg, and that which Blacksburg has a reputation of being a tough place to get to and a tough place to play.
Yeah, I remember us getting there, and it was probably 40 or 50 degrees, and we get to Blacksburg, and we check in the hotel, and we go practice, we come out from practice an hour and a half later, and there are 3 feet of snow on the ground. You know, it was just a strange trip all around.
All right, how many times did you participate in the Dana Kirk second half opening misdirection play?
I didn't. I don't know. I don't think I ever started the second half of Coach Kirk. But I would tell you this: we always came out way earlier than we would in the halftime, and we would always make sure we get out on the floor first. And I'll tell you, nothing made Dana more mad than when an official gave it away.
Yeah.
When we were lined up the wrong way, and the official goes, "No, you're going that way," and I mean, Dana would be livid because of that. But it's amazing how often it worked. We actually did it a couple of times with Coach Finch as head coach, and it worked.
I remember seeing an interview with Denny Crum, and they asked him about that, and he says, let me tell you something. He says, I'll never forget, we were at Memphis coming out of the half. He said, the last thing I said to our guys before we left the locker room at halftime was, don't fall for the Dana Kirk misdirection play. And he said, damned if we didn't come out and line up, and they ran it on us. He says, I don't know what it was, but it was a brilliant play. It's like you were talking about Kirk being a great tactician. It's a simple thing that relies on, I guess, human psychology of just kind of, following what other people do.
Yeah, if you wasn't aware of us doing that, we could just totally fool you. But I was like, I know in their scouting plan, they know we do this. They're gonna do it, and whenever it worked, I would be amazed. I was like, are you kidding? They fell for this again? but it was, the interesting part about it with Dana too, Alan, was we didn't do it all the time. He picked and chose when we did it. And I'm sure he did that based on how that game was going, how the environment and the atmosphere was. And so it wasn't that we did it every game. It was different games where he decided, let's do wrong way.
Right.
And that would be it. And I would tell you, 95% of the time it worked.
Yeah, unless the officials gave it away.
Right, exactly.
Well, you had an opportunity to play for two of the great personalities of Memphis history in Kirk and Coach Finch, and you also work for one of the great personalities of Memphis politics. Whether you were a Harrington fan or a Harrington opponent, Dr. Harrington is skilled. He would dispute this. He would say he's not a politician, but you don't get to be mayor for 16 years and not be a great politician. Tell me a little bit about what was it like working for Dr. Harrington?
It was interesting because when Dr. Harrington first hired me, I had just dealt with the most devastating loss of my life, and that was my mom. It was 1996, New Year's Day. I lost my mother, and it was just a trying time for me. And I started working for him in June of 1996. If you think about, if you take away the probably last couple of years of Doc's administration, his term, if you look at what he accomplished as a Black man during that time, I mean, from graduating from college at Lemoyne, becoming a school teacher, becoming a principal, becoming the first Black superintendent, becoming the first Black mayor. I mean, if you've got a parent and you've got a kid, that's a success story. That's what you want your kid to do. You want to look at that example and say, you can be this, you can do this, and it's not going to be hard. And so Dr. Harrington for me too was an inspiration, and he was always real with me about it. I mean, we had real conversations about growing up being an African-American man, the challenges we faced, the challenges he faced, and so he was a really, because what's the most impressive thing about Dr. Harrington to me was I saw him, and just like Mayor now has to be involved in so many meetings and have so many press conferences, but he was really in tune with what was going on. He could read his crowd and play to his crowd, whether he knew what he was going on or not. He could convince his crowd that I hear you, I get you, and trust me. And so he was a strong personality. I mean, he would, it was interesting. I say, people ask me all the time, so what's the difference in Dr. Harrington and Mayor Strickland? I said, well, I've learned from both of them two things. One, I was like, Doc is the kind that, where he'll tell you to go. The mayor is the kind that say, I respectfully disagree with you. And so they're at that two extreme, but I look at both of their leadership. They're both leaders. They're both extremely leaders, and they're both passionate people about this city and about the work that they are doing in their roles. And so again, if you look at Dr. Harrington in totality, he was grateful to see. Another thing for me, Alan, is I'm the only person that can lay claim to having played basketball for the first Black coach at Memphis State and worked for the only Black mayor, the first Black mayor in the city of Memphis. And I look at both of their careers, Alan, and it's so similar. And the one thing I look at both of them, and I will tell you that it's something that I think about a lot. As successful as they both were in their prime and doing what they're doing, I think they both stayed too long. I think they both, unfortunately, the great work that they both did during their term, being an example, working hard, being examples and role models, staying too long, now many people just remember the end. And fortunate for me, I'm able to remember all the in-between and know what they both did, what they both meant to this city and what they both meant to the African-American community. But just in my humble opinion, I felt like they both stayed too long, and they both could and should have gotten out when they were on top. And I hate that, again, when you talk about both of their careers, the biggest emphasis is going to be on the last years. Larry's last years as coach, when he wasn't winning a whole lot and the pressure was on. Dr. Harrington's last year as mayor, when things were a little challenging for him, and perhaps his demeanor was not always what we thought the best way to handle it. But I thought they both stayed too long, but I admire both of them for paving the road for someone like myself to be able to come along and be in this position I'm in now.
Well, Coach Finch particularly, you make the point, when he was a player, he brought this city together. When he was a coach, he brought this city together. And in both roles, brought a lot of accolades to the university, which adheres to the city. And then folks like you that were forever touched by his leadership and mentorship. And you're a testament to his career, that you went from playing with him, for him, to what you've done since then. And I always thought it was a shame, even though the university is erecting a monument to him in front of the practice facility out on South Campus, that because he stayed as long as he did, he never got a victory lap. He never really got that opportunity for the city really to show him how much he meant to them. And I know they're black and white, young and old Tiger fans that would love to have done that for Coach Finch.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Alan, because I was fortunate enough the last 2 or 3 years of Coach Finch's life, I got a chance to spend a lot of time with him. And you're so right, because he gave his life to this city. He came when they told him not to come. He came back and resurrected the program after the Coach Kirk situation. And not long after he got fired from the university, his health declined. And I'll just never forget his last few days. You're right. He really felt like the city he gave his all to. I mean, he read the harsh comments that Memphians were saying, and things were done. He lost his job. And his last, I guess, real understanding of what was going on was that my city got rid of me. He didn't get to realize how important he was to this city and how much his legacy is still today to this city. But you're so right. And that's the one thing that bothers me about Coach more than anything, is that he didn't get a chance for his last hurrah. He didn't get that chance to see what this city, what he meant to this city. So that was the toughest part for me, because again, I had a chance to be with him during those last few days and know how depressed he was. And I mean, if there was ever a true example of a man dying of a broken heart, Larry Finch died of a broken heart.
Well, that's so unfortunate. I hope he knows it now.
Yeah. I'm sure he's looking down, yelling and screaming at me. But I say this, and I tell people, I remember when Coach Finch passed, and I was talking with some people about it. I said, well, I know one thing for sure. When he gets to heaven, he's going to see my mom, and she's going to tell him, thank you for helping raising that boy of mine to be a respectful young man. So I think she made him appreciative when he got to heaven.
Well, that's good. I hope so. Let me ask you this: how does a guy go from basketball standout to in politics, public service? How did that happen?
It was interesting. I guess I can only say by the grace of God. I remember when my senior year in college, I kind of messed off a little bit and didn't graduate until the following year. And I looked for a major. I said, I need to find a major based on the credit hours I got now that I can get out of here in a year. And our academic advisor at the time said, you should look into sociology. And so I looked into it. I was like, if this gets me out of here quick, then I'm okay, I'll do sociology. But what I didn't know was that sociology degree, I look back on it now, it prepared me for this. It talked about people and how people react and respond, and how your environment and your life experience, how it all weighs into how you grow up and to be, and how you look at things. And it helps me today, because I understand when I talk about our leadership team here, there's diversity here. Everybody's not going to think the way I think, because their life experiences are different. But my sociology degree helped me with this. And again, just by faith, Dr. Harrington in '96 was looking for someone to join his staff in community affairs. It's interesting, Alan, how I started my career in 1996 as manager of community affairs, and now my title with the mayor, special assistant to the mayor for community affairs. And so those 13 years, and I have to keep referencing my faith, there's no doubt in my mind that when the Lord allowed me to work those 13 years for Dr. Harrington, it prepared me for now. because I would tell you that even though we're facing challenges now that I've never faced before, I get it and I understand. And so, and I've just been able to just grow. I mean, those 13 years I worked for Dr. Harrington put me in the community. It allowed me to establish relationships. I mean, relationships that I'm able to use now and talk with now. As we're talking about police injustices, and I'm having to talk with these pastors and community people in our community that perhaps are looking at things differently, I'm not having to establish a relationship with them. It's already there. And so the fact that I was able to establish those relationships with them back then, now when I'm going to them and talking about these issues, yeah, we have some challenging conversations, but they know me, they get me, they trust me, and so I'm able to do that. So I've been fortunate that those 13 years I worked for Dr. Harrington prepared me for this, and I just got to go back and say how blessed and fortunate I am to have the mayor, because what the Mayor Strickland has done, he has allowed me to utilize my skill set to the best of my ability. And my role in working for him is it's where my skill set is. You know, it is what I've done, it's who I am, and it works. And so allow me a role in this administration that fits my skill set to perfection. I mean, again, I'm learning and still growing as I go, but I would tell you that a lot of what's happening, the activities may be different, but our approach is got to be pretty much the same. And so 13 years with Dr. Harrington, and then Mayor Strickland allowed me to use my talent and my skill set. Ideally, I could not have drawn up a better role for me than what I am now. And he's allowed me to utilize my skill set. He's given me the leeway to do what I need to do, and he trusts me. And so for that, if I don't succeed, it's my fault.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job, and I think that's part of what makes Strickland so successful is that he has an ability to get folks, put them in a place, and then let them fill that space with their own talent. And that's a hard thing to do, and I think it shows that he's secure in himself and that he lets people excel in their space. It makes him look better, and it makes the people working with him more successful and look better too. And it's a win-win for everybody.
It is. I mean, it's a great environment. I mean, again, when you know that you're going to have input, when you know that you're going to be trusted and respected, and you bring a mindset to the table that's respected and understood, it makes you want to be like a coach. I mean, I'd run through a wall for Coach Kirk and Coach Finch, because again, I believe they had my best interest at heart and wanted what's best. And it was the same with Dr. Harrington. It was interesting when Dr. Harrington ran for mayor last time, and you can imagine the people who were calling me, all right, Ken, who are you going to support? Where are you? What's going on? And I had to say to them, I said, guys, understand this. I said, unfortunately, in our profession, loyalty is not common. And I said for 13 years, and I will forever be appreciative and indebted to Dr. Harrington for giving me an opportunity to grow. I said, but for 13 years, I was loyal to him, committed to him, and worked my butt out for him. I said, now I'm loyal to this mayor because he's a good person. He's a good man. We have a great relationship. He's the best person. He's leading us in the right direction, and I'm loyal to him. And so we got to do what's right in our own eye. My mom always taught me that what's popular isn't always what's right. And I've always just tried to do what's right in my life and in my heart. And so it's just been, it has been a joy and a wonderful to work and to just showcase my skills. And I've always wanted to show I was more than just a basketball player. And I think this opportunity this time has allowed me to do that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. You are more than just a basketball player. You're a great basketball player, but you're doing a great job now. And I look forward to what the next chapter is. We'll maybe get to that in another show. But I appreciate your service to Memphis, and I appreciate you being on the show. And I look down and it looks like we're out of time. We didn't get to talk about everything we wanted to talk about. Maybe we can do this again sometime. Ken, I really appreciate it.
I love you. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me. And I would just encourage all Memphians, let's mask up.
Mask up.
You're in a tough time right now. Let's mask up.
Very good. Well, if you've enjoyed this this podcast, please share it. Either email it to somebody or share it on social media. Like it or rate it. Do whatever you can do out there. We appreciate it, and I'll be looking to talk to you next time. And right now, I'm going to go get a little justice. Thank you.